Hello everyone, and welcome to another Star Citizen Addicts Anonymous. I'm Nikki Batgirl D'Angelo, and this is episode 67 if you're counting it as Star Citizen Addicts Anonymous news shows. And of course with the new format, who knows what episode it is. I'm just throwing everything into that one feed. Well, this week definitely wasn't uneventful, but it definitely didn't carry with it some of the things we expected. By now, we all expected to be in the Star Citizen Arena Commander module version 1.1. But that didn't happen, and it didn't happen for some good reasons. When Chris got back from the first show, remember he's done 2 shows in 2 weeks, and that was PAX East, the patch just wasn't ready for prime time, and they wanted to get it touched up, wanted to hash things out. And the rec system wasn't done either, which was just completed by Turbine in the last couple of days. So it was pushed back, and they updated the version of the client on the PTU. And we got some updates like I talked about in my Retaliator and Gladius video. And that was pretty cool, right? So we've got some good things going on. And then I guess they descended upon Austin for South by Southwest. And they won an award, the most anticipated crowdfunded game out there. And then they released a video too, and the video is quite cool to look at. So we're going to stop for a second and we're going to watch the video here. Quite a video, right? And I want to point out some things. That looks like a living and breathing persistent universe. And it looks like Tony, with their most recent hire, I guess he's not their most recent hire anymore, but who they brought in to take over the PU is doing an amazing job. I can't wait to actually be able to walk around R-Corp so I can see that type of stuff going on. And R-Corp is the first place that we're going to be able to walk through. So there were presentations, there were parties, there were events, there were a whole bunch of things that went on in South by Southwest. All that I missed, but I got a great deal of information from y'all, and I thank you very much for that. So the next piece that we want to talk about is what else came about from that. And there's this letter from Chris Roberts, another letter from the chairman. And although it kind of sort of coincides with $75 million, it's not all about the money. It's not about stretch goals. It's not about giving us more things that we could throw in our hangar. What it's about is giving us more information and to say thank you to us. And there's a lot coming on. I mean, there's going to be version 1.1 in the rec system. There's going to be version 1.2 and Star Marine. There's going to be the social module. And of course, there's going to be version 2.0, which I don't know what the name of that is yet. There's a lot going on in this universe that we're about ready to take part in. And I'm very excited about it because it has been a wild ride. The next piece I want to talk about is going to be our first feature. And that first feature, of course, has to do with weapons mounts. Now, I did have some insight, as you'll hear, inside of the video. And the insight was that I was standing there in Santa Monica when I went there to visit Ben and Sandy. And of course, Will always takes me up on a tour, and I went to a couple of the desks. And there's this gentleman working on the P-52 Merlin. And I look at it, I go, I thought the Merlin was complete. I thought it was done. And he looked at me and said, well, it was, but it was done at a time before they knew what the size and volume of all the weapons were going to be. And now the weapons that are in the game don't fit into the slots, into the sockets that were in the P-52 Merlin. So I was able to see this wireframe cutaway as he was pulling and tugging on different pieces of it to make room for things like bulldogs and M3As and other size 1 weaponry. And in it, I was able to see how many things he needed to take into account. The cooling pipe and the CPU pipe and the power pipe. And because of that, I was able to gain a lot of insight into what they were about ready to do and how and what was going to happen when they implemented it. So let's talk about weapons mounts, and you're going to hear my little feature here that kind of puts it into layman's terms. In this first feature, we're going to be talking about weapons mounts and the update that just happened through a design document that was released by CIG last Friday. Now, the design document isn't anything totally new. This is pretty much how they've been looking at weapons mounts internally, but the first time that we're actually going to be coming up against this is about ready to be dropped in version 1.1 of Arena Commander, and that's because with REC, we're going to be able to buy a multitude of different weapons, some that we haven't seen and some that we've been using, and we're going to have to be held to the standards that were set by the CIG staff when they built the ships. Now, it may be confusing for some, and it might have been for me, but I had an opportunity to see a ship in the progress of being updated to handle the new system, and that was this ship. This is the P-52 Merlin, and of course you wouldn't be able to see the ship like this unless you had access to the CryEngine, and I don't, so I downloaded this photo. Now, what I saw on their screen was a wireframe, and the wireframe showed all of the pipes, the CPU pipe, the heat pipe, the fuel pipe, the power pipe, everything that was in there. And then it showed the volume of the interior of the ship. And as this artist was trying to make things work correctly, he had to increase the volume or the dimensions of the Merlin in different ways in order to fit the current weapons that were size 1, size 2, size 3, class 1, class 2, class 3. And it took me a few minutes to, get an idea of what he was doing, and then I finally asked. I said, "What's going on here?" And he said, "Well, there's the whole system before was that they would create a ship. And the Constellation was created at a time
when there wasn't a standardized method of building weaponry. So what they needed to do was to go back and make sure that the weapons that were size 1 actually fit into the Merlin. And guess what? They did not. So this standardized system actually gives an artist that's building a ship an easier way to know what's going to fit where and how big of a volume to leave for different weapon systems and weapon mounts. So that's the first piece. It's funny, I couldn't find any wireframe drawings of the pipes that were inside of the system because that's going to come into play next. What you see here is the volume of things that have to fit in a ship. This is incredible, right? You have intakes, you have power plant, you have thrusters and main thrusters. You don't see there, and I think you do have shields, CPU, radar, and weapon systems, so everything needs to fit in the ship. And then on the wings, you need to know that the distance between the pylons are going to fit the weapons that are currently out. The system that we're on now has a way to classify weapons by class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it might be, being anything from a fixed weapon to a gimbaled weapon to a automatic turret to a manned turret to a large turret to anti-ship weapons. That's changing, and it's changing to be something that's more like this. What sizes do they fit? What are the sizes of the weapons? And then the mounts will be different, and we'll talk about that in a few seconds. So over here you see size 1, size 2, and size 3 weapons in front of ships that could hold them. This image gives you an idea of the size of a particular weapon, how big it can get. I believe this one's a size 8, and it's on the front of, might be a Bengal Carrier, maybe that's an Idris. I'm not 100% sure what ship this is.
This next screenshot actually shows the size of the weapons next to some ships that we all know. The one on the far left is the M50. I believe the one in the center may be the front end of an Idris or maybe a 300, I'm not sure. But this gives you a better idea of what we'll be talking about in the future. I'm going to use this image for the next few moments as I just discuss the next piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle has to do with sizes of the actual weapon mounts. Now, weapon mounts are also labeled size 1 through size 10, I believe. And the size 1 mount would be those that would be found on something like a P-52 Merlin and X-85 or the brand new, but we haven't seen it yet, Archimedes. A size 1 weapon mount will be able to handle one size 1 weapon. And that would be something like a CF007 Bulldog repeater, but it would only be in a fixed positioning, meaning it would just be firing straight ahead. Now, let's move up to something like the Gladius, which is a brand new spacecraft that we can now fly in Arena Commander once 1.1 goes live. It has 2 size 2 weapon mounts, one on each wing, and one under the nose. Now, as a size 2, you have 2 options. You can go with a size 1 gimbaled mount and a size 1 weapon, or you can go with one size 2 weapon. Now, the reasoning behind this is both for balancing and for making it adhere to some of the other properties the ship has to adhere to, which would be the volume of size, the CPU load, the cooling load, and the power load. So those are a lot of things that are coming into play. And the rule of thumb is, if you have a size 2 weapon mount, the 2 pieces have to equal size 2. So if you just have a size 2 weapon, obviously 2 equals 2. If you have a size 1 weapon with a size 1 gimbaled mount, 1 plus 1 equals 2. And this holds true all the way up through the size 10 weapons that they have. Now, things get a little bit tricky inside of the manned turrets. Manned and unmanned turrets are going to have items that are beyond the weapon mount, like CPU load, power load, and cooling load. But you're also going to have to look at something like a size 3 mount, which I think is the first one. A size 3 mount, like the 6 that are found on the Retaliator, can't take 3 size
3 weapons. They can't take 3 size 1 weapons because you would go over that with the actual item mount, which is the turret. Essentially, the most that they can carry is 2 size 1 mounts, and that would be 2 size 1 weapons. So that's why when you look at the Retaliator in the hangar, it has CF007s on it. A lot of this has to do with balancing. A lot of this has to do with the volume of space a weapon takes up, and a lot of this has to do with keeping it concurrent and keeping it standard throughout all the ships that are going to be built henceforth. This also makes it easier for a person making their own ships, a modder, to follow a certain select set of rules to be able to build their ship so it can handle all of the different weapon mounts. So say they're saying, I have 2 size 2 turrets over here. Well, size 2 turret really would be something like the forward canard turret on a Hornet, and thus might not be able to handle much more than 2 size 1s. So these are things that we will have to pay attention to in the future, and I'm going to do more on this. I'm going to do a specific weapon mount video as soon as Arena Commander version 1.1 comes out, so I'll be able to take a look at the different weapons that are in the game and the different mounts and explain them to bring this to better light. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this, and let's get back to the show.
So what'd you think of the video? Did it help clear up some of the confusion? I hope it did, because it was a little bit confusing when you started seeing it. In fact, it caused a little bit of controversy. And of course, whenever there's controversy, CR, Chris Roberts, comes out of the out of the shadows, which he's really not in the shadows. He's always looking at the different message boards, and he tries to give explanation to quell those that are the naysayers. And here's his letter. You can read about it. Just search through all the dev posts at the bottom of the front page, and it goes back to about the middle of the weekend, and you'll find his post. Chris sets straight a lot of things that people had misconceptions of, and I hope I was able to do the same for many of you that didn't get to read that. And I put it into layman's terms, which makes it easier for the everyday person to read it. He explained it eloquently, but in a technical way that probably hit the people that were the naysayers. So moving on from that, which was a good deal, we also had something else that happened last week, and kind of like as a thank you going into South by Southwest, they made all of the current spacecraft that can fly inside of AC free to fly for 1 week. What that meant is you didn't see them in the hangar, and I know there's been some of you that say if you clear all of the spacecraft out of your hangar, you might be able to see them. I don't want to tell people to do that because it's not really a 100% absolute that that's going to work. But what you were able to do is just get into an Arena Commander match and pick any of the flyable ships. That meant some of the elusive ships like the F7CS and F7CR or the LN, the CL, whatever version of the ship you were looking for. If you wanted to race and test out the M50, if you wanted to test out the 350R, didn't know how it was going to fare against the Gamma, which isn't a limited ship, you could do that and see how they worked. And that is going to be over, I believe, tomorrow or Monday. Usually when they do a week that starts on a Friday and ends on the Monday after the following Friday. We'll see how that works. It may be off. But for those of you who are saying, what about the Gladius? It's going to be in 1.1. Are we going to be able to fly that? In a couple of weeks, we will be seeing the Gladius inside of the hangar. Well, not inside of the hangar. Inside of, not just inside the hangar and flyable, but also free to fly for a week like they've done with all the other ships. And at that point, they'll probably put it up for sale again too. Speaking of which, when 1.1 comes out, we're also going to have the Retaliator in the hangar. When the Retaliator's in the hangar, it's going to go back on sale again, and there's going to be a brochure. So for those of you that have looked at mine or other people's Retaliator videos and said, oh my Lord, I just have to have one of those, well, your wish is going to come true. And I would suggest that you jump on board as quickly as you can if you have the extra money to spend. And if not, remember, there's always going to be a non-monetary way to get the ship in-game with UEC. So if you want to get the ship with real currency, you're going to have an opportunity. If you want to wait until the game goes live, hey, I'm all for that. You know, there won't be any LTI on this particular version of the ship. That ship has sailed, so you're not really getting anything special except for the ability to fly it when 2.0 comes out a few months down the road. So this next piece is going to be my first organization profile. And this one is going to be for the guys over at Explore. They contacted me about a month ago and sent me their recruitment video. And I let it go because I kept on having shows that were big and long-winded. And you know the drill. And one thing I want to say is that when I finally got to look at it, this is a great organization. Now, we have the enablers and we're going to keep them out of this at this point. But if you're into exploration and that's what you want to do, this is the group that you want to be part of. So I'm going to have the link to their organization down below, and we're going to see their video right now. All right, so that was pretty cool, right? If you like their video and want to give them a shout, please just check them out and give out a nice little application to them and see if they will accept you to join their wonderful group. If you have an organization that you'd like me to highlight here on the show, please do so by giving me a link to your organization. Write down a few words you want me to say about them. And please, if you have a video on YouTube for recruitment, do give me the link to it, or at least give me an opportunity to get the original copy so I could put it here on the show. All right, let's move on to the next piece. And the next piece is going to be what's on Sandy's Facebook.
This week, Sandy has been very busy on her Facebook, being that she was at South by Southwest. This first image asks us who's working in the dark. Looks like a bunch of character models in there. God, why are there still no female models? In this first one, it looks like a little bit of FPS action going on here. You can see the HUD, you can see the weapon firing. Pretty cool if you ask me. And this is the first image we have of the party, or the booth, I should say, over at South by Southwest. They never have anything this cool when they're at Dragon Con. Maybe I should go to South by Southwest. Carter's and Nick's. I like where they're going with this. This is actually pretty cool looking. And of course in this one, Ben's looking very serious. I wonder what's on his mind. Also is styling a new haircut, isn't he? Or new way of doing his hair. And this may be the reason why Ben was looking so serious. He was thinking, what can I put this giant weapon on? It's a pretty cool looking gun, is it not? And that concludes Sandy's Facebook's images for this week. Tune in next week for another episode.
All right, so there's a couple of things there that I'm really looking forward to. And I'm sure that I said it in the video over there, but wow, every time I see some of these new screenshots that she puts up, like that weapon, I feel like I just want to go out and see it right now. So hopefully the things that she shows us show up a little bit sooner than later. We're still waiting on the Cutlass, and she showed us pictures of that a while ago. And if you're asking me, whoa, the Cutlass is in my hangar. Well, of course, the Cutlass is getting reworked. All right, so we go from Sandy, we're going to go over to an ex-CIG employee, one that I'm wholeheartedly supporting, and that will be Eric Peterson and Rob Irving and Mike Moreland and so many others that used to work at CIG that now have their own studio over in Austin called Descendant Studios.
Descendant Studios hit the 1/3 mark in crowdfunding today. They have just about another $380,000 left to go to fund this game fully. Now, when I mean fully, I mean to satisfy the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is asking for $600,000. But we all know that A-plus titles take quite a bit more. And Eric is going to need well over $1 million to get this thing to where we, the people that want to back this, want it to be. So what I'm asking you to do is to think about supporting Eric and Descendant Studios. There's so many XCIG people here. Let's at least give them a virtual high five, which is just by backing it with $5. And that's all I can ask. Or get the word out there to some of your friends that might like the game. It's a remake of Descent. Descent was a wonderful game back in its day, and its IP is in the right hands. That's all I have to say about this today, and I'll give you some frequent updates as time goes on. Thank you.
And now I feel like a ham asking, or a heel asking you to support Star Citizen AA. But if you like Star Citizen AA, you can support it in 3 ways. 1, watch it. That's the best way to support it at this point. You watch it, it gives me a reason to be here every week. Make sure you're sharing, liking, or telling people about it to make that even better. And for the elite few, or the few that have an extra something, it does cost a little bit to keep the show, actually a lot to keep the show running. And I do videos about 3 to 5 days a week, and let me tell you, it's a 30 to 45 hour a week job. If you feel like supporting the show a little bit more than just the other 2 ways, which are all I ever really ask you to do, go out to patreon.com/Batgirl, and there's a card at the top somewhere that you could click on at this point. And just think about, helping me out and keeping the show going. I'd hope to have Darian Vorlick on the show this week. I hope to have Darian Vorlick on the show next week. You're saying, who is he? Well, if you ever see the dev videos, Travis Day, and it's Darian Vorlick. Now, Darian I want to talk to because he came over from Blizzard after Alex Mayberry did. And it's very important that I get him on the show because I think he validates a lot of things about this game. He came over from a company that's made, right? They're job security. They've got a lot of projects over there. They have their brand new one called Overwatch. They have StarCraft, Diablo 3, Heroes of the Storm, and of course, a never-ending additions to the World of Warcraft franchise. So he had job security, and he was working for Blizzard and a company that definitely has that atmosphere of fun and excitement in it. And he left and he went over and he started working for Star Citizen, which we feel that it's going to be successful, but there's still no guarantee in the end that it's going to be a long-lived game like Blizzard has been, which has been around for over 20 years. So I hope to get him on the show to tell you guys the story he told me. And that story was actually pretty interesting and validates everything about this game, because when you have people that are leaving Blizzard to come over to Star Citizen, to come over to Cloud Imperium Games, I think that is a big deal, all right? And I know Blizzard might not be the most wonderful place to work, but I know other people that have worked there and they kind of loved it. All right, so enough of this long-winded talk. I wish I had internet. I don't know if I'm going to be able to put this up tonight. We'll find out by the time it's done fully rendering. And with that said, look for the update to Star Citizen later tonight, which is Thursday, or tomorrow, and hopefully we'll all be in the verse together. So now I can say, with that said, you all be safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.